Hi everyone, welcome to the second part of my top 20 albums of 2017. If you want to watch the first part, which was numbers 20 through number 11, there's a link in the description, and also there's something that you can click on right here in the corner of the screen. So feel free to do that. But if you just want to see the top 10, I understand. I'm kind of impatient too. And I won't keep you waiting. We'll get right into it with number 10, Ikima Yuko's Akarui Mado. This is a really beautiful acoustic folk record that was recommended to me by one of the people down in the comments, so feel free to shout yourself out if you were that guy. And this is just a really beautiful record. This is pretty much just acoustic guitar and vocals, but Ikima Yuko's voice is just so serene and beautiful on this record, and the acoustic guitar, like, man, this is what an acoustic guitar should sound like. It has a lot of resonance to it. It really, like, I feel like if I just turn this up, it would really, like, resonate in my chest. It has a lot of bass to it. The sound is very full. And the songs are these kind of winding, melancholy, sad ballads that I find just to be really beautiful. And I return to this album a ton. And it also helps that it really reminds me a lot of the kind of 70s psych folk singer-songwriters we had, like Kanenobu Sachiko or Yamazaki Hako, both of whom I really love. So this album is kind of to my tastes very particularly. But yeah, this is just a really beautiful, intimate singer-songwriter record that is surprisingly diverse despite its kind of sparse instrumentation. And I think it's really worth a listen if this sounds up your alley. Then at number 9, we have Dayglo with their debut full-length record, Say Goodbye to Memory Den. Dayglo is a, I guess, kind of pop-punk, indie-pop, indie-rock outfit from Tokyo, and this is just a really well-groomed, well-crafted collection of great, kind of accessible rock songs. The performances all over this thing are just super clean. The production sounds great, and the songwriting is really great as well. These are some of the kind of catchiest, most immediate songs I've heard all year, but they're also visceral and, they're rock songs at their core before they're pop songs. And I think Dayglo just really pulled together a great record overall on here. There's not a bad song on here, except for maybe the closer, which is a little bit too indie pop for me. But everything else on here is just really top-notch pop rock. And then we move on to number 8 on my list, Anguri by Hikeshu. Hikeshu is this kind of strange avant-pop band, I guess, that still experiments with like progressive rock and free jazz, and I mean just jazz in general is really present on their more recent records. And they continue their tradition of being one of the most compellingly strange acts in Japan with this new record. They've been putting out records since like late 70s or 80s, and they're showing no signs of stopping. This thing is filled with strange avant-garde experimentations, but those are also flanked by these songs that are surprisingly down-to-earth, groove-focused, and actually kind of easy to listen to despite how wacky they can kind of seem. Performances all over this thing are, of course, great. There's some really great like saxophone soloing, and the kind of unhinged vocals that we get on especially some of the weirder, more avant-garde, like improvised free jazz tracks, I find to be really horrifying and compelling at the same time. And yeah, this is just one of the most unique records of the year, and it really left a mark, and I just kept listening to it and kind of returning to it throughout the year. And at number 7, we have another really deft balance of experimentation and pop accessibility on Miu Mao's new record, Drawing. Miu Mao I talked about in my last video, the top 10 EPs, Japanese EPs of 2017, because they dropped a really great EP, and they really expanded on that idea on this new record, Drawing. The songs from that EP actually end up on this record as well. And this is just a really consistent and great, dense, kind of industrial, synthy post-punk record that has a really compelling kind of dark atmosphere to it, but it doesn't give up on having these kind of accessible poppy chorus parts to it as well. The album is definitely experimental, and it's not at its core a pop album, I wouldn't say, but there's plenty of moments listening to this thing that stuck out as really great kind of danceable grooves or catchy earworm melodies, and overall it's just a really compelling record that balances kind of the best of both worlds. But that desire for balance is pretty much completely abandoned by our number 6 record here, Crystal Body by Oshiri Penpens. Oshiri Penpens is a strange, unhinged punk band, I guess, from, I believe, Osaka? Or maybe Kyoto? I don't know. They're a Kansai band. That's all that's important. And this thing is compelling and strange and dizzying and like visceral and raw, but also somewhat kind of psychedelic and abstract. It's a mess of a record, and that's what really makes it so great. There's a lot of these driving, repetitive rhythms from the drums, and this kind of lightly distorted, brittle guitar tone that plays sometimes just what seems like complete improvised nonsense over top of it, and a frontman who just howls and moans in the most deranged way on top of this kind of minimalist cacophony of music. It's a really great record, and you should listen to it, and you should listen to all the records that are coming up, because we are getting into the top 5 with Prince Graves' new record, Half Awakening. Prince Graves is the solo project from Kawai Ami of the band She Talks Silence, and on this record she teamed up with the boys over at Cairo Phenomenons to put together a really great, dreamy, psychedelic pop album. There are soft, dreamy, watery soundscapes. There are catchy choruses and kind of pop melodies, and there are even some solid kind of visceral rock jams on here. And I just find every song on here to be really well done. Always has something interesting going on. The album is a little experimental and covers a kind of wide range of sounds while having a pretty cohesive sound to it, and not abandoning any of its pop accessibility. Really great record, you should listen to it. And at number 4, we have Clean by Blonde New Half. What can I say? This is a just really well done punk record. It is loud and aggressive and fast-paced and noisy and in your face, but it also has a surprising amount of focus on texture. There's a lot of interesting kind of experimentation in the kind of timbre of the guitar that I think pretty much always works out. The album has a really great structure to it. It kind of toys with you with some of the songs and just really explodes in a violent fireball towards the end of it. And the production is like perfect. You know, I could not ask for anything more. It knows how to be lo-fi and fuzzy at certain times, but it also knows how to kind of clean up and be punchy and direct when it needs to be. There's clearly a lot of care put into the mixing and production of this record, and I think it all just really shows, and this record shines as just one of the best records of the year. But it's not quite number one. But we're getting there. Clocking in at number 3, we have, of course, it had to be on here, the new Cornelius record, Mellow Waves. Cornelius is somebody you should really know, pioneer of Shibuya Kei, and just generally a kind of interesting sonic figure in Japanese musical history. And on this record, he's showing no signs that he's slowing down. These songs are all incredibly well crafted. They're harmonically dense and interesting, and the production is great, and there's just some of the most compelling guitar solos I've ever heard on this record. They are just really top-notch. There's clearly a lot of care put into them. Every note in these guitar solos feels like it was so meticulously thought out that it could never have been any other note. But at the same time, it's constantly a surprise. I find it kind of awe-inspiring that someone's able to put together a record that is this kind of meticulously crafted and still make it feel so kind of in the moment and kind of direct and human. Every song on here is great, and Cornelius is living up to his reputation as just one of the most interesting and greatest figures in Japanese musical history. But, and maybe I'm kind of showing my bias here, as far as raw enjoyment, I probably enjoyed my number 2 record on here a bit more. This is the compilation from Call and Response Records, Throw Away Your CDs, Go Out to a Show. This thing is a monster. It's over an hour long. It has, I think, 17 tracks, all by different artists on it. And it is just a huge collection of some of the best post-punk and punk that you can find in Japan. Some of my favorite bands just ever, like Hyaka, Otori, and of course Panic Smile, end up on this thing, and all their songs are great, especially the Panic Smile track, which I think is probably my favorite individual track I've heard all year. There are a few low points on the album where I don't think it quite lives up to the greatness of most of the artists, but overall this is just a really solid compilation, and I almost feel guilty putting a compilation album this high up on my list, but it's just true. I just love this album, and maybe I'm biased. Well, I am biased because this is as up my alley as an album can be, but it's not number 1. And that's because my number 1 album of 2017 is, without a doubt, Indon's Through the Mirror. I reviewed this record earlier this year in a collaborative review with Rocky, the Japanese music nerd, over on his channel, so you might not have seen this review, but this is a monstrous noise rock album with various metal influences, including black metal, maybe even some grindcore, some hardcore punk, and even a little bit of post-rock on this thing. The songs are dense and hellish and intense. The vocals are completely unhinged, and the wall of intense, just visceral energy that this album is kind of just awe-inspiring to witness. Tracks like Perversion Till Death exhaust me. I listen to that song and I feel like I need to take a bath and unwind for the whole rest of the day. And the closer, Torch Your House, is an incredibly beautiful track, despite how kind of hellish and dense and noisy it is. Every single song on here is just so well done and needed for the album. There's no song that feels redundant or like it shouldn't be on the album, or like it could have been left off and it would have been fine. Every song is kind of equally important to the success of this album. And it was the first album that really blew me away in 2017, and nothing has topped it yet. Incredibly great record, dense, brutal, and hellish, but also written with a lot of finesse and care and a kind of delicate hand. And it's my number one. Top record of 2017, Indon's Through the Mirror. If you think I'm crazy or just want to talk about your favorite albums, feel free to talk down in the comments section. I will be keeping an eye on them. And thanks for hanging out. 2017's been a really great year for music, though I didn't give out a 10 to any albums. The highest I gave out was a 9, but I gave out a few 9s. So yeah, looking forward to 2018 and what music it will bring us. And thanks for hanging out, guys. I'll see you guys next week, and we'll get into some reviews like usual. Peace.